It was 2 in the morning. The neon sign of the Wendy's restaurant flickered weakly in the pouring rain. My eyes were glued to the blue glow of my phone. The final shift at this particular Wendy's, located on a desolate stretch of highway outside Queens, was always the same, tedious and silent. The last customer had left an hour ago. The solitude was something I had grown used to. Suddenly, a cold draft of air sliced through the warmth of the restaurant. It was a cold that cut deeper than the air conditioning. A shiver ran down my spine. I looked around but saw nothing. It must have been my imagination. My work was almost done. Everything was cleaned and put away, except for the 2 frosty machines. This was the final task of my daily routine. A sense of unease always crept up on me when I had to clean them. Tonight, it was an all-consuming dread. I approached the first machine. The metal was strangely cold, as if someone had just rubbed it with ice. My hands began to tremble. I couldn't understand why I was feeling this way. A faint humming sound seemed to be coming from the machine itself, like a whisper I couldn't quite decipher. The machine's display, which usually showed the temperature, was now showing a series of strange symbols I had never seen before. The symbols seemed to shift and contort, forming the grotesque shape of a human face. My heart hammered against my ribs. I blinked, and the symbols were gone, replaced by the normal temperature reading. Just a glitch, I muttered to myself, trying to stay calm. But my hands were still shaking as I quickly finished with the first machine and moved to the second. This one was new, recently installed by the owner. The dread intensified as I got closer to it. The new machine was colder than the first. When I touched its surface, my handprint appeared for a second before fading away. I began to clean it frantically. Then, with a loud shriek, the machine shut down. The lights went out, leaving only the dim, emergency lights. Outside, the street lights along the highway went dark too. I pulled out my phone to call the manager, but there was no signal. Panic began to set in. A low hissing sound came from the machine, and it seemed to be calling my name. I froze, my body completely paralyzed with fear. I knew with a chilling certainty that I was not alone. In the faint glow of my phone, I saw a dark, oily liquid oozing down the side of the new frosty machine. It wasn't the regular frosty mix. It had a putrid, rotten smell. I backed away, convinced the liquid was alive. Suddenly, the machine's screen flickered back to life. But instead of showing numbers, a hazy, distorted face appeared. The face smiled, then wept, then twisted into a monstrous visage. Its eyes were fixed on mine. They seemed to look right through me, seeing my fear and helplessness. The air was still, silent except for the machine's hissing. I held my breath, frozen in place. Then, from the dispenser nozzle, a long, black, finger-like appendage emerged. It was filthy, dripping with the dark fluid, and it slowly began to reach toward me. I ran for the back door, trying to escape, but the handle wouldn't turn. I yanked and pulled, banging on the door with all my might. It was no use. I was trapped. My phone slipped from my hand and fell to the floor. The screen was cracked, but the light was still on. The light from the phone illuminated the shiny metal of the frosty machine, and I saw my own reflection. But my reflection was laughing, a horrifying, twisted grin. Its eyes were completely black. I pinched myself, trying to wake from this nightmare. But the shaking of my body and the frantic beat of my heart told me this was all too real. Just as suddenly as it had gone out, the power came back on. The streetlights outside flickered back to life. I turned around to look at the machine. It looked completely normal. There was no dark fluid, no terrifying face. It was as if nothing had happened. I grabbed my things and ran out to my car, driving away as fast as I could. The entire time, a single question echoed in my mind. Was it all in my head? The next day, I received a call. My manager had died from a heart attack the night before. The police were investigating, but I knew in my gut it wasn't a natural death. I refused to go back to work that night. The dread was too overwhelming. I called my boss and told them I couldn't do the night shift anymore. I wanted to tell someone about what I had seen, but my manager's death left me with no one to trust. Who would believe me anyway? A few nights later, I found the courage to go back. I told myself it was just stress, that I had imagined everything. But the moment I stepped inside the restaurant, a chilling fear washed over me. I looked at the frosty machine and a cold dread crept up my spine. It seemed harmless, but I knew a dark energy was lurking beneath its pristine surface. It was 2 a.m. Everything was silent. The same cold wind, the same haunting stillness. This time, I was ready. I grabbed my phone and began to film everything. The numbers on the machine's display began to drop rapidly. The temperature plunged from -10 to -20, then -30. It continued to drop until it reached -100 degrees. The machine's hissing began again, but this time I could hear a distorted voice. It was calling my name, whispering, "You can't escape, Alex." I froze in fear. My phone dropped from my hand. Then I saw the dark fluid wasn't just oozing from the machine. It was forming a shape on the floor. It was a grotesque humanoid figure with 2 glowing red eyes. I ran to the restroom, locking the door behind me. I looked at my hands and saw a symbol on my palm, the same one I had seen on the machine's display. It was slowly beginning to glow. A twisted laugh echoed from outside the door, and then everything went silent. A minute passed, then 2, then 10. I slowly opened the door and peered outside. The restaurant was quiet. The frosty machine looked normal, but a dark stain remained on the floor. It was slowly beginning to fade. I knew it wasn't over. I ran out of the restaurant, but my car was gone. I looked down the highway and saw my car parked next to the Wendy sign. The same twisted grin I had seen on the machine's screen was drawn on the windshield. And in that moment, I realized I was not alone. I wasn't the only one working the night shift, and the horror was far from over. These frosty nights were just beginning. Sandville, New Jersey is a small, quiet town. On its main street sits an old Wendy's restaurant. From the outside, it looks like any other fast food joint, but locals whisper strange stories about it. I'm Alex, and I work here. I've never believed in those urban legends, but what happened tonight changed everything. It was almost 11 p.m. We were getting ready to close, and my coworker Tom and I were just waiting for the last customer to leave. Suddenly, the front door swung open and a woman rushed inside. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with terror. She hurried to the counter, out of breath, and demanded, "I need a bowl of chili now." Her frantic state took me by surprise. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I asked. She didn't answer, just repeated her request for chili, her voice desperate and filled with an urgency that stopped me from asking anything else. Tom went to the kitchen and brought her a fresh bowl. She grabbed the bowl with trembling hands and sat down at a corner table. Her eyes darted toward the street outside, as if she were running from something. Tom and I went back to our cleaning. A moment later, a blood-curdling scream shattered the silence. The woman had dropped her bowl and chili was splattered all over the floor. She was standing there, her hand clapped over her mouth, with blood dripping between her fingers. Tom and I ran to her side. When she lowered her hand, we saw a small, jagged cut on the corner of her mouth. "There was something in the chili," she whispered. "What was it?" I asked. She didn't answer, instead holding up her hand. In her palm lay something small and dark. As I looked closer, I realized it was a human finger. It was mangled and filthy, its nail black and cracked. Tom and I froze in horror. The woman fainted and fell to the floor. I immediately called the police. They took the woman to the hospital and sent the finger to the forensics lab. The police interviewed both of us, but they seemed to think we were lying. They asked us about the chili. I told them it was made earlier that morning, a fresh batch. The next morning, the police returned. They interrogated our manager, Jerry, a cold, no-nonsense man. He told the police, "These things happen. There's no explanation for it." His words took me by surprise. "What do you mean, Jerry?" I asked. Has this happened before? Jerry looked at me. I'll tell you later, he said. I knew he was hiding something. There was a story here, a dark secret that he didn't want anyone to know. The incident sent shockwaves through Sandville. Our sales plummeted to zero. The people in town were too scared to eat at our Wendy's. I kept pressing Jerry for answers. What happened? I'd ask. Tell me the whole story. At first, he refused to say anything, but my persistence finally wore him down. One night, he told me everything. 20 years ago, a chef named Dave worked here, Jerry began. He was a good guy, but he had some mental issues. One day, he vanished without a trace. The police searched for him, but they never found him. Then customers started finding strange things in their chili. At first, it was just fingernails, or things that looked like fingers. But when the police were called, they'd discover they were just pieces of meat. We all thought it was some kind of sick joke. So Dave did this? I asked. But he was missing. Jerry shook his head. The police thought so too. But one night, a customer found something in his chili. It was one of Dave's fingers. That's when the police started their investigation. They examined the chili pot and found Dave's fingerprints on the inside. I was petrified. So Dave cut off his own finger and put it in the chili? Jerry looked at me with a faraway look in his eyes. No. When the police went to Dave's house, they found him dead. His body was decomposed, but one of his fingers was missing. So whose finger was it? I asked, completely bewildered. Jerry just shrugged. No one knows. I knew then that Dave's ghost was haunting this place. But why? What was his motive? I asked Jerry, why did Dave go missing? Jerry went silent. He looked at me but didn't say a word. I knew he was hiding something. I decided to find out for myself. I began searching for old documents and records, but I found nothing. One night, while I was cleaning the kitchen alone, I noticed something written on the inside of the chili pot. The writing was old and faint, but I could make it out. It said, "Forgive me, Jerry." I knew then that Jerry was lying. He knew what happened to Dave. The next day I confronted Jerry in his office. "Jerry," I said, "what happened to Dave?" He denied everything at first, but when I told him, "I read the message on the pot. I know you're hiding something," he broke down. He told me everything. 20 years ago, Dave and I had an argument, he said. Business was slow and I wanted to change the chili recipe, but Dave refused. He said the recipe was a family heirloom and he couldn't change it. I kept pushing him. In a fit of desperation, he cut off his own finger and put it in the chili, hoping I would be forced to change the recipe. I was stunned. So Dave died because of it? Jerry shook his head. No. He went home. I tried to get him to go to the hospital, but he wouldn't. He kept saying he didn't know what he had done. And that night, he died. So whose fingers were they? I asked. Jerry began to tremble. When Dave cut off his finger, I tried to help him, but he was furious with me. He cursed me, saying I would never know peace again in this restaurant. And ever since that night, customers have been finding fingers in their chili. But when the police arrive, they turn into pieces of meat. It's like Dave's ghost is playing a twisted game with us. I couldn't believe him. But the next morning, as I was cleaning the kitchen, I saw a human finger in the chili pot. It was disgusting and vile. I grabbed the pot and ran outside to get rid of it. But when I got outside, the finger was gone. And on my hand, the ghost of a fingerprint had appeared. I knew then that Jerry wasn't lying. Dave's ghost was haunting this place, seeking revenge. I decided to quit. But when I got into my car, I saw a bowl on the passenger seat. Inside was chili, and in the middle of it, a human finger. I screamed, but no one was around to hear me. I realized I couldn't escape the curse. Dave's ghost was following me, forcing me to eat the very chili that held his cursed finger. To this day, I still work at that Wendy's in Sandville. I no longer eat the chili, but every night, when I get into my car to go home, a fresh bowl is waiting for me on the passenger seat, and I know I'll never escape the curse. In a quiet corner of Brooklyn, New York, sits an old Wendy's restaurant. Surrounded by a large park and a few apartment buildings, it's a place where I, Maria, have worked for the past 3 years. My job is to manage the kids' parties, and it's something I genuinely enjoy. But what happened tonight will forever be the most horrifying experience of my life. It was a birthday party for a little girl named Lily, who was turning 5. She was a sweet, cheerful kid. Lily's mom had told me that she loved hamburgers, so I had to make a special one for her. I made the burger myself, and I was sure that all the ingredients were fresh and clean. I served it to Lily, who took it with a big smile and bit into it. The smile vanished instantly. A strange crunching sound came from her mouth as if something was breaking. Her mom asked, "What's wrong, sweetie?" Lily didn't answer. Blood started to trickle from her mouth. Her mother screamed. Lily put her hand to her mouth, trying to pull something out. Her mother rushed to help. I ran to them. Lily's mom pulled a small, sharp shard of glass from her mouth. It looked like a large needle, and it was covered in blood. I was stunned. Where did a piece of glass come from in our restaurant? I quickly called an ambulance, which arrived and took Lily to the hospital. Lily's mom looked at me with angry eyes. "What's wrong with your restaurant? How did a piece of glass get into my daughter's food?" I couldn't answer. The police arrived and began their investigation. They checked everything in the restaurant, but they couldn't find a single piece of glass. They questioned me and the manager. I was sure that I hadn't seen any glass in the burger, but the police were suspicious. I left the restaurant with the image of Lily's blood-soaked face flashing in my mind. I couldn't stop thinking, where did the glass come from? Our restaurant doesn't use glass containers. All our dishes are plastic. I couldn't sleep that night. Lily's cries and her mother's screams echoed in my ears. The next morning, when I arrived at the restaurant, our manager Roger called me into his office. "Maria," he said, "I know you're innocent, but the police won't let us go. We have to solve this mystery ourselves." Roger's words gave me a glimmer of hope. We both searched the restaurant again, but it was no use. Roger gave me access to the restaurant's CCTV footage. I watched the moment I gave Lily the burger. Everything looked normal. I put the burger on a plate, and Roger gave it to Lily. There was no glass, but as I watched the moment Lily bit into the burger, I saw something flash in the corner of her eye. I replayed the footage, but I couldn't see anything. "What are you looking at?" Roger asked. "I'm not sure," I said. "I think my eyes are playing tricks on me." We watched the footage again and again, but we couldn't figure it out. Suddenly, I had an idea. "Roger, let me see the full CCTV footage," I said. Roger gave me the full footage. I started watching from the beginning. I saw myself making the burger, and when I turned away, I saw a small piece of glass in my hand. But I didn't notice it then. I showed it to Roger. He was stunned. "Maria, how is this possible? Why didn't you notice?" I didn't know. I was sure that I had made the burger cleanly, but where did the glass come from? I watched the footage more closely. I saw a small girl standing in the corner of the kitchen. Her hair was messy, and her face was hidden. She was watching me. "Roger, who is that girl?" I asked. Roger shook his head. "I don't know. There's no little girl in this restaurant." I was scared. Was this girl a ghost? I focused on the girl. I saw her watching me, and in her hand was a small piece of glass. As she watched me, she dropped the glass into the burger. But I didn't see it. I knew this girl was behind everything. But who was she? "Roger, has there been any accident in this restaurant before?" I asked. He went silent. He didn't answer me. I knew he was hiding something. "Roger, what happened?" I asked again. He sighed. 5 years ago, a little girl died in this restaurant. She was here with her parents. She was sitting alone, and no one noticed her. She ate her food and died. "How did she die?" I asked. Roger didn't answer. I started digging through the restaurant's old records. I wanted to know what happened 5 years ago. I found out that a little girl named Amy had died in the restaurant. She had come for a special party and had been running around a lot. Her parents couldn't see her. Amy ate a burger and then she became sick. She was sitting on the floor and in front of her was a piece of glass. The police investigated and concluded that Amy had eaten too much sugar and had a heart attack. The piece of glass was just a coincidence. The police closed the case, but I knew that wasn't true. When I watched the CCTV footage again, I saw that when Amy was sitting alone, a man was sitting at the table behind her. The man was eating a burger and he had a glass of water. As he ate, a piece of glass fell from his cup onto the floor. Amy saw it. Amy picked up the glass shard, and the man saw her. He came to her and forced her to eat the burger. Amy ate the burger and the glass got stuck in her throat. When I saw this, my body went numb. I realized that Amy wasn't alone. Her parents couldn't see her, and the man took advantage of her. I showed the footage to Roger. "How is this possible?" he said. "Why didn't we see this before?" "Someone hid this footage," I said. I then focused on the man. I knew him. He comes to our restaurant often. He always sits at the corner table and has a glass of water next to him. I asked Roger, "Who is that man?" Roger gave me his name. I immediately called the police and told them everything. They arrested the man, but I knew the story wasn't over. A few days later, while I was working, I heard a little girl's laugh. I looked and saw Lily. She was sitting in the corner of the restaurant, but her mother wasn't there. Lily was eating her burger and she was laughing. I was scared. I walked toward her, but when I got closer, I saw that Lily had finished her burger, and there was no blood on her face. She looked at me and smiled, and I saw a piece of glass in her mouth. I knew then that Amy's ghost had possessed Lily, and she had come to get her revenge. To this day, I still work at that restaurant, but I never serve burgers to little girls anymore, because I know that at any moment that silent scream will start again, and I know this story will never end. It was nearly 1 in the morning. A biting cold wind was howling through the empty streets of New York, and I was sitting on my bike, staring at the screen of my Food Fast app, hoping for a new order. Delivering food at night in this city wasn't easy. Even with the roads clear, some orders would take you to strange, desolate places. Just then, a notification popped up. New order. The screen read, Wendy's, 1246 Shadow Creek Avenue. The address seemed off, but I wasn't about to turn down a delivery in this cold. I started my bike and headed down the dark road. The moment I arrived at 1246 Shadow Creek Avenue, a shiver ran down my spine. It was an old, crumbling mall with broken glass windows and peeling plaster. The place had been abandoned for years. But on one side of the entrance, the Wendy's restaurant was glowing with a strange red light. The inside looked brand new and brightly lit, a stark contrast to the decaying building around it. I parked my bike and hesitantly walked toward the restaurant. The automatic door slid open. There were no employees inside, only a self-service kiosk with a paper bag sitting beside it. The kiosk screen was flashing a message. "Your Frosty is ready for delivery." As I approached, the text vanished, replaced by a new message that sent a chill down my spine. "Not for delivery, it's for you." I looked around. There were no sounds, no movement. I felt like someone was watching me. I grabbed the bag and peeked inside, pulling out a Frosty. It was unnaturally cold, and the patterns on the frozen surface looked eerily intricate. Fear gripped me. I quickly ran out and got on my bike. As I glanced back, the door closed behind me. I started the engine, and in the glare of my headlight, I saw that the smile on the Wendy's logo had stretched into a wide, menacing grin. Her eyes seemed to follow me. I sped down a back alley toward the main road, trying to get out of that place as fast as possible. But I could feel that as long as I had the Frosty with me, I wasn't safe. Every Wendy's signpost I passed seemed to be watching me, their iconic smiles contorting into a horrifying grimace. I pulled my bike into a secluded alley and took out my phone. The Food Fast app was gone. No messages, no orders. Was the order even real? My heart was pounding. Then a new notification appeared, but this time it wasn't from Food Fast. It was a link to an old, unknown website called Destination Fear. I clicked the link, and an old video started playing on a dark homepage. An elderly man sat there, his eyes lost in the shadows. He said, "Son, you have mistakenly started a game from which no one can escape. As long as the Frosty is with you, you are not safe. It's not food, it's a pact. You must return this Frosty to where it was made, or it will consume your soul." My hands were shaking. The old man's words echoed in my head. I didn't understand what kind of pact this was. I quickly searched for the location of 1246 Shadow Creek Avenue on Google Maps, but there was no Wendy's there. The map only showed a deserted mall. Was that restaurant only there for me? I got on my bike and headed back to the mall. When I arrived, the entire place was once again plunged into darkness. There was no sign of the Wendy's. No lights were on. In the glow of my bike's headlight, I saw that where the restaurant had been, there was only a broken wall and some old garbage. I got off my bike. Suddenly, I felt like I wasn't alone. I sensed a presence in the darkness. I could hear a soft whispering behind me. It sounded like hundreds of voices speaking at once. In that whisper, I could clearly hear, "Give it back, give it back, give it back." The Frosty packet almost slipped from my hand. I quickly got on my bike and rode away. But I knew that until I found the end of this mystery, I wouldn't be free of this curse. And as long as I had this Frosty, this dark entity would continue to follow me. I sped out of the city and onto the highway. The whispering behind me grew more intense. It felt like an invisible force was chasing me. I realized that I was no longer in the normal world. The Frosty in my bag was as cold as a block of ice, and every time a Wendy's sign appeared in my headlights, its smile seemed to contort even more. As I crossed the city limits, the whispering suddenly stopped. My bike's headlight flickered. Everything seemed to return to normal, but I knew this was no ordinary normalcy. I checked my phone. The Food Fast app was back online. The screen read, "Delivery successful. The customer is waiting for you." I quickly clicked on the screen and saw the address. It was in a place not on the city map, an abandoned house far from the city center. I rode there, but no one was there. The house had been abandoned for years. But as I got off my bike, I saw a Frosty packet sitting on the doorstep. I approached it, my heart pounding, and when I opened the packet, I found no Frosty inside. Only an old diary. As I opened it, the first page read, "My name is Dave Thomas. I have discovered the mysterious pacts of this world. I have created my business, Wendy's, for a special purpose. The Frosty is not ordinary food, it is a pact." As I read the diary, everything became clear. Dave Thomas had created this Frosty, but he didn't intend for it to be ordinary food. He used it for a special purpose. An cursed entity was hidden within this Frosty, which attracted people toward it. As I was leaving, I felt like someone was watching me. I looked back and saw a distorted smile on the door of the house. The smile was that of the girl on the Wendy's logo. I started my bike and rode away without a second thought, but I knew this curse wouldn't leave my life. It would stay with me until I found the root cause of this curse. I realized I had become a victim of this curse, and I would never be free of it. My name is Jack. I'm a podcaster, and my show is called Dark Dinners. I research urban legends and the dark secrets hidden behind famous fast food chains. Today's episode was about a nearly forgotten legend, the 444 deal at Wendy's. It's not a regular combo. It's a secret menu item supposedly only available at specific restaurants with a grim history. It was 11 p.m. and I was about to start my live recording. Before going live, I took a deep breath. For this episode, I planned to test the legend myself. I held an old diary I'd bought from a retired Wendy's employee. The diary claimed that the 444 deal could only be found at locations where strange things happened after dark. The last page of the diary had an address, 2567 Westside Avenue. My heart pounded as I read it. This was the site of a horrific murder in the 1990s where a young boy had killed his mother. I got in my car and drove to the location. The atmosphere was eerily quiet when I arrived. The Wendy's building looked like it had been closed for years. The sign was rusted and old, but a faint light emanated from inside. I pushed the door open, and a blast of cold air hit me. The restaurant was empty. There was no one behind the counter, just an old kiosk. The screen was glowing with a single question. What would you like? I slowly approached the kiosk. There was no menu, just the question. Mustering my courage, I typed, "The 444 deal?" The screen flickered violently, and a distorted sound, like an old videotape spooling, echoed in the silent room. Just then, my podcast recording app turned on by itself. I tried to close it, but the button wouldn't respond. The kiosk screen slowly began to display the menu items, but they were no ordinary burgers, fries, or drinks. They were dark, distorted images, a child's handprint, a blackened burger, and a broken shard of glass. Hesitantly, I pressed a button. The screen displayed, "Your order is being prepared." I looked at the counter. On it sat a dusty old fry container, a burger, and a cup of soda. They looked like they had been there for ages. I picked up the bag. As I was about to take a bite, the French fries shriveled and turned black in my hand. The burger turned black too, and the soda in the cup began to bleed, turning into a dark, viscous liquid. I screamed and dropped the bag. That's when the distorted laughter and whispers started. It sounded like 100 voices speaking at once. Through the chilling whispers, I could clearly hear, "Finish the deal, finish the deal." I ran out of the restaurant, jumped on my bike, and didn't look back. As I rode away, I saw the smile on the Wendy's logo stretch into a horrifying grimace. Its eyes were filled with nothing but pure fear and hate. I sped away on my bike, heading for the highway. My podcast app was still recording, and the unsettling whispers were captured with chilling clarity. I hesitantly glanced at the screen and saw a map had appeared. On it, 3 more Wendy's locations were glowing with red dots. A message flashed below the map. "The deal is not complete. You must complete the remaining 3 deals." My heart pounded. I realized this was no ordinary podcast topic. I was trapped in a horrifying game. I tried to throw my phone away, but it felt stuck to my hand. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't let it go. The map's first new location was 999 East Avenue. When I arrived, I found an abandoned Wendy's with a rusted car and shattered windows sitting out front. No lights were on inside. As I approached, my bike's engine suddenly died. I got off the bike and tried to restart it, but nothing happened. Trembling, I walked toward the restaurant. I pushed the door open and a cold gust of wind hit me. Inside, next to the cash register, was a black box. A message was etched onto its surface. "The second deal." With a shaking hand, I opened the box. Inside was an old, rotting burger. Bits of bloody meat seemed to glow on top of the patty. I screamed in terror, and just then, a new recording started on my podcast app. It was a man's shriek, followed by a distorted voice that said, "To complete the deal, you must eat this." I picked up the burger. Just as I was about to take a bite, it withered and turned black. Dark smoke billowed from it. Terrified, I dropped it. The temperature in the room dropped instantly. My phone screen suddenly lit up with a new message. "The third deal awaits you." I ran out of the restaurant. My bike's engine roared to life on the first try, and I sped away toward the next location. I knew now that I would never be free of this deal. As I rode, a thought occurred to me. Maybe I could escape this deal if I got someone else to take it. I saw a food delivery rider up ahead. I pulled up next to him and said, "I have this deal. It's horrible. I want you to have it." He looked at me, and his smile twisted into the menacing grin of the girl on the Wendy's logo. He just stood there, smiling, a horrific, unnatural expression on his face. In terror, I sped away, and when I looked back, he was still standing there smiling. I sped off on my bike towards the next location. The map showed the third address, 1001 Dead End Road. The name alone sent a jolt of fear through me. This was the site of a tragic car crash many years ago, where a whole family was buried alive in their car. I arrived to find a desolate stretch of forest with an old Wendy's sitting in the middle. In front of it was a single gravestone with the Wendy's logo etched on it. I got off my bike, and the engine suddenly cut out. The podcast app was still running, and the whispers were becoming clearer with every passing second. I walked toward the restaurant, pushing the door open, and a wave of cold air washed over me. Inside, next to the counter, was another black box. This one was labeled, "The Third Deal." My hands trembling, I opened the box. Inside was a package of old French fries, but they were covered in black smoke, and a distorted human face was visible in the mess. I screamed, and a new recording began on my podcast app. It was a person's shriek, followed by a twisted voice that said, "To complete the deal, you must eat this." I picked up the fries. As I was about to take a bite, they withered and turned black in my hand. Black smoke billowed from them. I dropped them and my body temperature plummeted. My phone's screen lit up with a new message. "The fourth deal awaits you." I ran out of the restaurant. My bike's engine roared to life and I sped away. I now knew I would never be free of this deal. As I rode, a thought crossed my mind. Perhaps I could escape this deal if I got someone else to take it. I saw a delivery rider up ahead. I went up to him and said, "I have this deal. It's horrible. I want you to have it." He looked at me and his smile twisted into the face of the girl on the Wendy's logo. He just stood there, smiling, a horrific, unnatural expression on his face. In terror, I sped away, and when I looked back, he was still standing there, smiling. I sped off on my bike toward the fourth and final location. The map showed it was an old, desolate Wendy's on Zero Avenue, a place that wasn't a real address. It was right next to an abandoned graveyard. When I arrived, my bike's engine suddenly died, and my podcast app shut down for good. I got off the bike. I tried to restart it, but nothing happened. Trembling, I walked toward the restaurant. I pushed the door open, and a blast of cold air hit me. Inside, on the counter, was an old Wendy's burger. A distorted human face was etched onto its surface. I screamed, and then a new recording started on my podcast app. It was a person's shriek, followed by a twisted voice saying, "To complete the deal, you must eat this." My hands shaking, I picked up the burger. Just as I was about to take a bite, it withered and turned black. Black smoke billowed from it. I screamed and dropped the burger. My body temperature plummeted, and my phone screen lit up with a new message. "The deal is complete." I ran out of the restaurant and got on my bike. The engine roared to life on the first try, and I sped away. I thought I would finally be free, but I knew I would never escape this deal. As I rode, a thought crossed my mind. Maybe I could escape this deal if I got someone else to take it. I saw a delivery rider up ahead. I went up to him and said, "I have this deal. It's horrible. I want you to have it." He looked at me and his smile twisted into the face of the girl on the Wendy's logo. He just stood there, smiling, a horrific, unnatural expression on his face. In terror, I sped away, and when I looked back, he was still standing there, smiling. I sped back towards the city. I knew this curse wouldn't leave my life. It would stay with me until I found the root cause of this curse. I realized I had become a victim, and I would never be free. As I sped back to the city, I thought, maybe I could be free of this curse if I gave this deal to someone else. But then I saw an old Wendy's behind me. In terror, I sped away, and when I looked back, I saw the face of the girl on the Wendy's logo was distorted, and her eyes seemed to be watching me. I realized this curse wouldn't leave my life. It would stay with me until I found the root cause. I had become a victim of this curse, and I would never be free of it. I sped back to the city. I knew this curse wouldn't leave my life. It would stay with me until I found the root cause. I had become a victim of this curse, and I would never be free of it. In the end, I returned to my podcast studio. I listened to the recording. I heard my screams and the distorted voice, but at the end I heard a new sound, the laughter of a small child. I screamed, and then a new message appeared on my podcast app. The 444 deal is complete now, the deal is yours.